A kid, barely 20 years old, is awarded the Bronze Star and the Purple Heart after being left for dead in a Vietnamese jungle moments after saving his entire squad. 10 years later, the Navy's elite, the SEALs, who had been impressed by him in a magazine interview, knock on his door desperately asking him to train them. And just a few months later, the wreckage of a small plane is found floating in a Nicaraguan lake after a mysterious explosion in mid-air. Today, in the time it takes you to drink a coffee, you'll discover why the name Michael Echanis, a man of Basque descent, still sends chills down the spine of veterans, martial arts masters, and spies across 3 continents. Martial might, where warriors live forever. Imagine someone hands you a hand-to-hand combat manual and whispers in your ear, "Be careful, the Pentagon banned it for being too lethal." Now imagine that every technique, every drawing, every word in that book was created by a man who first tested its effectiveness in the rice paddies of Vietnam, and then perfected it by teaching it to the elite commandos who protected a Central American dictator. Michael Echanis wasn't a movie action hero. He was the screenwriter, the director, and the main character of a story so real and brutal that even Hollywood wouldn't dare film it. Born in 1950 in Ontario, Oregon, and raised in the ruggedness of Idaho, Michael D. Echanis was the son of a cowboy and a school teacher. He grew up with a motto burned into him: the only way not to retreat is to move faster than the blow coming at you. Influenced by the stories of his father and uncles, all World War II veterans, and with his head full of war novels, he enlisted in the Army in 1969. He requested to join the 75th Ranger Regiment, the tip of the spear. Barely 2 months after setting foot in Vietnam, in May 1970, his unit was ambushed by North Vietnamese Army forces in Binh Duong province. Enemy bullets sliced the air so low they were cutting banana leaves around him. A grenade exploded just a few feet away, hurling him through the air and riddling his body. With shrapnel in his thigh, shoulder, and a devastating wound in his ankle, he refused to fall. As enemy fire raged, he was the only soldier able to return fire. Crawling through the mud, he dragged each of his 6 wounded comrades one by one into a ditch and held the enemy at bay until evacuation helicopters could land. This feat earned him the Bronze Star with V for Valor, the Purple Heart, and the Vietnamese Cross of Gallantry. In the military hospital, the surgeon delivered a crushing verdict: he would never run again. With his trademark coldness, Echanis replied he didn't need to run. He only needed to hit harder. After 15 months of service, he was honorably discharged, his right leg full of pins and a chronic pain that cracked with every step. Back in Idaho, he bought a rusty Ford and for 2 years roamed the back roads of America. He was a war hero with a suitcase full of medals and a torment his own government didn't know what to do with. A veteran doctor, seeing his struggle, suggested he practice judo to recover mobility in his ruined foot. What began as physical therapy turned into an obsession with mastering pain and forging his body into a weapon. He discovered Hwa Rang Do, an ancient and comprehensive Korean martial art known as the Way of the Flowering Knights, combining acrobatic kicks, joint locks, weapon combat, and a warrior philosophy bordering on spiritual. He devoted himself to his new master, and what began as rehabilitation soon proved far too intense for the civilian world. He added taekwondo and jiu-jitsu, and when his instructors had nothing left to teach him, Echanis began creating his own techniques, adapting them for real combat. In 1974, Soldier of Fortune magazine put him on the map with an article titled "The Ninja Soldier." The photo showed a shaven-headed veteran with a steel gaze teaching Special Forces members how to disarm a gorilla in under 5 seconds. The article was a bombshell in the special operations community. It landed in the hands of a SEAL commander at Fort Bragg, who, skeptical but intrigued, summoned him for a test. Echanis arrived at the training range, stood before a group of 10 SEAL Team 2 operators, and simply said, "Attack me." In less than a minute, all 10, the elite of the elite, were on the ground, neutralized. One of them, groaning as he got up, said, "If this is what you teach, we need you to train us all. Thus was born SEAL Team 2's official hand-to-hand combat program, with Michael Echanis as chief instructor and permanent advisor. Between 1975 and 1977, he poured all his knowledge into a series of manuals for Paladin Press, illustrated by himself: knife fighting, knife throwing for combat, and basic stick fighting for combat. The books became an underground hit, selling thousands of copies before the Department of Defense issued a recommendation to withdraw them, labeling them too lethal for the general public. Today, those original manuals are collector's items, fetching hundreds of dollars at gun shows. In 1977, the phone rang. It was a call from a booth in Tegucigalpa, Honduras. On the other end, a CIA contact made him a blunt offer. Nicaraguan President Anastasio Somoza was losing the war against Sandinista insurgents and desperately needed a counterinsurgency expert. The pay, $8,000 a month, cash, tax-free, no questions asked. Echanis agreed on two conditions. He would bring his own instructors, Chuck Sanders and Bobby Nguyen, and he demanded carte blanche to design and lead the training of Nicaragua's elite National Guard. For 10 months, at the Counterterrorism School of the Military Academy, Echanis forged a nightmare unit. He designed a brutal course that included night parachute jumps, assaults from moving helicopters, interrogation techniques, and knife combat in the dense jungle. He trained 120 commandos who became the regime's most feared force, and who, years later, would form the core of the CIA-backed Contras. Somoza, delighted, invited him to lunch at the National Palace and sought his advice. Meanwhile, the CIA used Echanis as an unofficial channel to oversee the dirty war, a deniable asset if things went wrong. The checks arrived on time, signed by a Panamanian shell company, keeping the operation off the books and far from congressional oversight. But Echanis became too visible, cruising through Managua in a jeep with his Fu Manchu mustache, giving press interviews and seeking fame, forgetting the secret nature of his mission. That day, Echanis boarded an Aero Commander plane alongside Chuck Sanders, Bobby Nguyen, Nicaraguan General Ivan Alegret, and another officer. The mission, a reconnaissance flight over the Costa Rican border to locate Sandinista camps. At 9:43 a.m., while flying over Lake Nicaragua near Masaya, an explosion in the cargo hold tore the plane apart. Witnesses on the ground saw the aircraft burst into flames in the air before plunging into the water. There were no survivors. The bodies, recovered 3 days later, told a grisly story. Echanis's body was intact, except for his eyes, blown from their sockets by explosive decompression. Somoza's official report cited a mechanical failure. Yet years later, a former CIA agent testified before Congress that internal reports pointed to a bomb sabotage, an operation attributed to the Sandinistas. The day after his death, Managua's streets were plastered with flyers proclaiming, "The ninja soldier no longer trains Somoza's killers." Michael Echanis was 27 years old. He was buried with military honors in Boise, Idaho. His tombstone is strikingly simple. It reads only, Michael D. Echanis, 1st Sergeant, Ranger. No mention of Vietnam, Hwarang Do, the SEALs, or Nicaragua. But every September 8th, a bouquet of fresh flowers appears on his grave. To this day, no one knows who leaves them. If you've just discovered a piece of history the official books prefer to omit, share this video with someone who thinks they know everything about the secret wars of the Cold War. And if stories of soldiers who became dark legends fascinate you, subscribe and hit the bell so you don't miss the next one. Michael Echanis was the result of giving a small-town kid the most dangerous gift in the world, the ability to become a human weapon. He trained his country's best warriors, fought in the shadows, and vanished into a Central American jungle. The manuals he wrote remain cult material, considered too dangerous by some. The operators he trained kept applying his lessons in conflicts around the globe, and every now and then someone stumbles upon one of his old books and asks the same haunting question Echanis left hanging in the air, like the ashes of his final flight. If this was real, what else don't we know?